almost 2 generations ago, a woman was raised in the city of Minneapolis whose father was a doctor. And their home was filled with the illustrious Christian leaders of that day, including R.A. Torrey, the man that Dwight L. Moody had as the first dean or principal of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago. And people of this type came and went in her father's home. This woman that I've met, a Mrs. Foster was her name, when she was a girl of 18, had a mysterious affliction which left her unable to see or to hear or to talk. But she was still perfectly conscious. And as she lay in bed, she promised the Lord that she would give her heart more completely to God and serve Him if He would heal her. And the process of her prayer, she saw the Lord at a distance in a vision, and in the vision He came toward her. And as He got nearly to where she was, He disappeared. And in the effort to try to continue to see Him, she opened her eyes and found she could see. She was healed. There's nothing much that an 18-year-old girl at the moment can do, and she grew up normally, finished her schoolwork, was married, lived out in the country club district of Minneapolis. And after a few years of this, one day the conviction came to her, I am not keeping my promise to God. This lovely house takes all my time, and I'm going to keep my promises to the Lord. And with her husband's permission and her now teenage daughter and teenage son, they moved back into a second-story flat, very lovely apartment in Minneapolis, where I had the privilege of being one time. The only memento she kept out of her country club days was an enormous vase, which should have been called a vase because of its value, but this enormous vase dominated an entirely too small hallway in this apartment. She went out and would collect women who had been healed and say, honey, God healed you to testify. And she had arranged with one of the missions downtown to have the Thursday afternoon service. And they would go down and pray, and then before the evening service which she had, they would go out and they would visit an area which I saw just this past month, which has now been torn out. But a whole series of saloons, shooting galleries down on Washington, and which at that time was the red light district. And by taking 25 women with her, she was perfectly safe, and they would go into these shooting galleries, which were the cover-ups for these houses, and sing at the top of their voices to the annoyance of the proprietors, and until their voices could be heard upstairs where the girls were. And they would run from 4 to 6 girls a night, saved, who would come downstairs to see what was going on. They would talk to the girls, get them back to the Lord, and get them back home. And this woman did tremendous work. She'd been healed, and now she gave herself to the work of God, and others joined her who had likewise been healed. Now, here Jesus gave His followers, granted that the people who are going to be healed want healing for the right reasons and will respond to it, and not to spend it upon their own pleasures, He gave them authority to heal people. He sent them first of all among His own people, not to the Samaritans, not to the Gentiles, but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. It's my personal conviction that God had then and still has a central place in the future of His kingdom for the people we know today as Jews, here called the house of Israel. He furthermore said in verse 8 that this is not to be commercialized. Whenever someone offers to pray for you for a donation of $10, scratch them off your list. It says, freely you have given, give without pay. There's always a temptation to try to profit like Balaam from the gifts of God. Balaam is remembered in the New Testament, not for his correct prophecies about the coming development of Jesus out of the line of the Jews, but he's remembered because he counseled Balak how to lay a stumbling block for the children of Israel. And the New Testament talks about him that he ran riotously in the way of covetousness, and to commercialize, to profit from the power and blessing of God is to do exactly what Peter refused to do when Simon wanted to buy the power of destroying the gift of the Holy Spirit. Peter said, I perceive that you are in the gall of iniquity, that your heart is not right with God. You and your money perish together. And he counseled him to pray that these things, the judgment of God would not fall upon him. And he tells us that we received without pay and we're to give without pay. There's a standard here also given as they travel as to what they're going to do financially. Let's read verse 9 through 13.
Take no gold, nor silver, nor copper in your belts, no bag for your journey, nor 2 tunics, nor sandals, nor a staff, for the laborer deserves his food. And whatever town or village you enter, find out who is worthy in it, and stay with him until you depart. And as you enter the house, salute it. And if the house is worthy, let your peace come upon it. But if it is not worthy, let your peace return to you.
And 14.
And if anyone will not receive you or listen to your words, shake off the dust from your feet so you leave that house, as you leave that house or town.
What he is saying here is that we are to trust God as we go about the work of God. This does not mean that there cannot be salary contracts, that there cannot be financial agreements. But it does mean that our working is not to be based upon this. This is hardly the place really to say anything personally. But I have sold shoes to support myself while I was preaching. I have worked in stores to support myself while I was pastoring and while I was teaching. And I am thankful when my church or a school or whatever gives me enough income that I don't have to go into secular employment to support myself. But I'm called to preach. And I'm going to preach whether they pay me for it or not. And I think this is what is meant here. That when you go, do not wait until you have a sufficient supply or until you have a contract. We're to go and preach because God will see to it that the laborer receives his hire as he goes. He's not supposed to take along 2 coats as the season progresses. We go from the warm season to the cool season. His clothing needs will be supplied. He's not to take surplus sandals, extra shoes, nor a staff. The laborer deserves his food. Now, it may not be fancy.
Now, we trust that you've taken your notes and you're now ready to take our TV Bible exam, which is coming right up. Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own and in his own." Jesus said, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own country and in his own house." When Jesus came back to Nazareth, he could do no mighty work there because of their When Jesus came back to Nazareth, he could do no mighty work there because of their unbelief.